Some men leave legacies behind when they die. This man left only questions. December 1st, 1948. Somerton Beach, Australia. A pristine shoreline disturbed only by early morning joggers and the body of a man nobody could name. Positioned as if merely resting, staring at the horizon, but his eyes would never see another sunrise. No identification, no wallet, nothing to tell the world who he was or why he ended up on that beach. In the shadowy aftermath of World War II, when nations were rebuilding and new battles were being fought in whispers and code, this stranger appeared and disappeared in equal measure. A ghost made flesh, then returned to the ether, leaving behind a collection of peculiarities that have confounded investigators for generations. His pockets contained an unused train ticket, a used bus ticket, a narrow aluminum comb, a pack of juicy fruit gum, cigarettes, and matches. Ordinary items that revealed nothing extraordinary about their owner. But it was what they didn't find that sparked the investigation. No identification, no wallet, no hat. Unusual for a well-dressed man of that era. The labels had been removed from his clothing. Every single one, deliberately cut away, as if someone, perhaps the man himself, had methodically erased his identity before his final moments. The autopsy only deepened the enigma. A healthy male, approximately 45 years old, physically fit with broad shoulders and well-maintained hands that suggested he wasn't accustomed to manual labor. His stomach contained the remains of a pasty eaten shortly before death. But the pathologist found no trace of poison despite clear indications that something had stopped this man's heart. The cause of death? Unknown. The man's identity? Unknown. The reason he came to that beach? Unknown. One question has persisted through decades of investigation. Who was this man who carried nothing to reveal his name? A question that would lead detectives through a labyrinth of coded messages, international intrigue, and the possibility that some mysteries are designed never to be solved. This nameless figure has become known simply as the Somerton Man. But in life, someone must have called him something else. Someone must have known him. Someone must have noticed when he vanished from their world. So begins Australia's most enduring forensic puzzle. A case where the victim's identity itself is the first and greatest mystery. A case where each answer only spawns more elaborate questions. Death speaks volumes, but a body without a name whispers secrets that echo across time. The discovery itself was unremarkable. A couple noticed the figure against the seawall at Somerton Beach around 7 p.m. on November 30th, assuming he was drunk or sleeping. By morning, he remained motionless. A curious passerby approached at 6:30 a.m. and found the man still there, unresponsive, cold. This wasn't slumber. This was the permanent silence of death. Police were summoned to the scene, noting how peculiar it seemed. The deceased sat in an almost relaxed position, head resting against the seawall, legs extended, feet crossed at the ankles. His shoes were meticulously polished despite being found on a beach. An unlit cigarette rested behind his ear while another, half-smoked, lay on his shirt collar, as if it had fallen from his lips when his final breath departed. Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean took charge of the investigation, methodically cataloging everything. The man wore a well-tailored suit inappropriate for beach-going, a white shirt, red and blue tie, brown trousers, socks and shoes, and a distinctive British-made jacket despite the warm Australian weather. Quality clothing, expertly tailored, suggesting a man of means, or at least of careful habits. But his pockets held minimal possessions. That unused train ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, chewing gum, cigarettes, matches, and the curious aluminum comb. Not manufactured in Australia. No wallet, no cash, no keys, nothing bearing a name or address. Nothing to connect him to the world of the living. The coroner, John Bennett Cleland, noted during his examination something unsettling. Rigor mortis had completely passed, suggesting the man had died at least 12 hours before discovery, possibly more. The body showed cyanosis in the face and hands, with blood pooled in the back, evidence he hadn't been moved after death. His last meal remained partially undigested. Most remarkably, all his organs appeared congested, particularly his spleen, which had swollen to 3 times its normal size. This appears consistent with poisoning, Cleland remarked, yet no foreign substance has been detected. The post-mortem examination revealed no visible signs of violence. No wounds, no bruises. The medical examiner, Dr. John Barclay Bennett, documented an undue congestion of the liver and spleen and ultimately determined the cause of death as heart failure, possibly induced by poison. Yet extensive toxicology tests revealed nothing definitive, another dead end. Fingerprints were taken and circulated throughout the English-speaking world. Dental records were compared against missing persons reports. The investigation branched out nationally, then internationally, yet nobody stepped forward to claim knowledge of this man. No missing person report matched his description. It was as if he had never existed until appearing lifeless on that beach. For months, investigators chased leads that evaporated upon close inspection. The mysterious stranger was photographed, fingerprinted, described in newspapers across Australia and beyond. His body was preserved using formalin while the investigation continued, an unusual step that illustrated how baffled authorities were. And then, a breakthrough emerged from the unlikeliest place, the train station's lost property office. 6 weeks after the discovery of the body, a brown suitcase was found in the Adelaide railway station cloakroom. It had been checked in the day before the man's death. Inside, a dressing gown, pair of slippers for pairs of underpants, pajamas, shaving equipment, a pair of trousers with sand in the cuffs, an electrician's screwdriver, a table knife cut down into a sharp instrument, a pair of scissors with sharpened points, and a stenciling brush. Most telling was a thread card of barber wax cotton, uncommon in Australia, but matching a spool found in the dead man's pocket. Just like his clothing, every identifying mark had been removed from the suitcase items. The name tag had been torn from the tie. The manufacturer's label had been carefully cut from the coat. Even the dry cleaning marks had been removed from the clothes. Someone had gone to elaborate lengths to erase this man's identity. But why? And if this was a deliberate erasure, a carefully planned disappearance, what went wrong? Why did he end up dead on a public beach, his secrets preserved, but his life extinguished? The investigation continued, but with each passing day, the trail grew colder. The man from nowhere remained exactly that, until the discovery of something so small yet so significant that it would transform this curious death into one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. In death's quiet aftermath, the strangest clue wasn't what he carried, but what was hidden inside it. 8 months after the discovery of the body, as the case grew increasingly cold, Detective Sergeant Lean made a decision to re-examine the man's possessions. During this meticulous second look, he discovered something previously overlooked: a tiny, tightly rolled piece of paper hidden in a fob pocket sewn inside the deceased's trousers. This secret pocket, typically used for a watch, contained what would become the investigation's most tantalizing clue. The scrap contained just 2 words: Tamám Shud. These Persian words, roughly translated as "it is ended" or "it is finished," were printed on the paper, not handwritten. The fragment had been torn from the final page of a book, specifically from the last page of Edward Fitzgerald's translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of Persian poems. This wasn't just any book, but one filled with meditations on life, death, and the transient nature of existence. The significance wasn't lost on investigators. A man dies mysteriously with no identification except a hidden message that declares it is ended. The poetic finality was unsettling. Was this a suicide note of sorts? A message to someone who would understand its meaning? Or something more complex? With renewed vigor, Police launched a public campaign to locate the specific copy of the book from which the page had been torn. For weeks, nothing. Then, in late July 1949, a man walked into the Adelaide police station with an extraordinary story. He had found a rare first edition copy of the Rubaiyat in the back seat of his unlocked car around the time of the Somerton man's death. He hadn't connected it to the case until now. When detectives examined this book, they discovered the back page had indeed been torn out, precisely where the words Tamám Shud would have appeared. But the book contained something even more astonishing. Inside the back cover was a series of seemingly random letters, handwritten in pencil. Rubaiyat, Liawi, Spimpanip, Mliaboayak, Itn Samsgap. This wasn't just gibberish. The formation and grouping suggested a code, possibly a professional one. Naval intelligence experts, cryptographers, and code-breaking specialists from across the Commonwealth examined these markings. None could decipher their meaning. Some suggested it might be a one-time pad cipher, virtually unbreakable without the key. Others thought it might be the meaningless jottings of a disturbed mind. But the neat precision of the letters argued against randomness. Alongside this cryptic sequence was another clue, a telephone number. This number belonged to a nurse who lived in Glenelg, less than a mile from where the body was found. When questioned, the young woman, we'll call her Jessica Thompson, though her real name was protected for decades, claimed no knowledge of the Somerton man. Yet witnesses reported seeing her visibly shocked when shown his photograph, though she steadfastly denied recognizing him. Thompson admitted owning a copy of the Rubaiyat, but claimed she had given it to an Army lieutenant named Alfred Boxall during the war. Police tracked down Boxall, very much alive, who still possessed the copy Thompson had given him, with the Tamám Shud page intact. This wasn't the book connected to our mystery. The web grew more intricate when detectives discovered that Thompson had told neighbors she was previously a nurse at Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney, the same hospital where Alfred Boxall had been treated. Was this mere coincidence? Most peculiar was Thompson's request to remain anonymous, a wish that was honored for decades until after her death. Why would an innocent bystander, randomly connected to the case through a phone number, be so insistent on privacy unless she feared something? Witnesses describe her as highly intelligent, but extremely evasive during questioning. Another layer of mystery emerged when investigators noted the physical characteristics of the Somerton man, particularly his ears. The medical examiner had noted that his ears had a rare anatomical feature known as Darwin's tubercle, a small bump on the inner helix of the ear shared by only 1 to 2% of the population. Years later, when photographs of Thompson's son became available, researchers noted the same rare ear formation. Could the Somerton man have been the boy's father? The suitcase found at the railway station revealed other curious details. It contained 3 items of clothing with the name T key marked on them. Yet exhaustive searches found no missing T key matching the dead man's description. Was this his real name with the T merely coincidental to Thompson's last initial? Or was it another deliberate misdirection? Inside the case was also an orange thread, matching thread found on the man's body, the same distinctive barber thread used for repairing sneakers and sails. Some investigators theorized the man might have been a sailor, while others suggested connections to intelligence services where such specialized equipment might be used for document repair. As months turned to years, the investigation encountered more questions than answers. The code remained unbroken. The man remained unidentified. Jessica Thompson took whatever knowledge she possessed to her grave, admitting only to one confidant before her death that the Somerton man was known to her family, but was not a very nice person. The case transformed from an unexplained death to something far more intricate, a puzzle box of cryptography, hidden identities, and whispered connections that seemed to touch on international espionage. Australia's Woomera rocket range had just been established in 1947, testing long-range weapons during the early Cold War. British atomic tests would soon begin at Maralinga. Adelaide suddenly seemed less like a sleepy coastal city and more like a potential hotbed of international intelligence activity. Was the Somerton man a spy who knew too much? Was the code a dead drop that was never collected? Or was this elaborate mystery nothing more than the tragic end of a broken-hearted man who traveled to see a woman who didn't want him, carrying poetry and encoded private thoughts? The answer might lie in the unbreakable code he left behind, letters that have defied the world's foremost cryptographers for over 7 decades. Every unexplained death creates a vacuum that theories rush to fill, but rarely do they bring the dead back to life. As decades passed, the Somerton man's identity remained elusive, but theories proliferated like shadows at dusk. Each potential explanation addressed some elements of the puzzle, while leaving others in darkness. The espionage theory gained substantial traction among investigators and the public alike. The timing, 1948, with the Cold War solidifying and Australia becoming a strategic intelligence frontier, couldn't be ignored. The man's physical attributes suggested someone in peak condition, possibly military trained. His clothing was well-tailored yet ordinary enough to blend into any crowd. The method of death, an undetectable poison, paralleled known assassination techniques of various intelligence agencies. Former intelligence officers who reviewed the case noted that the cipher resembled field codes used during World War II. The missing labels from clothing was standard procedure for covert operatives. Identification markings removed to prevent tracing if captured. The peculiar pockets sewn inside the trousers mirrored spy craft techniques for concealing microfilm or messages. Professor Derek Abbott of Adelaide University, who has studied the case extensively, pointed out that the Somerton man's calves were unusually developed, consistent with someone trained in certain forms of silent movement or combat. The modified knife and scissors found in his suitcase could have served as improvised spy tools. Yet the espionage theory falters on several fronts. If he was a professional spy, why would he carry an encoded message rather than memorizing it? Why die so publicly? Why retain the scrap of paper that connected him to the Rubaiyat at all? The romantic tragedy theory emerged as a compelling alternative. In this narrative, the unidentified man traveled to Adelaide seeking Jessica Thompson, perhaps after a wartime romance. The Tamám Shud paper, "It is ended," reads like the final statement of someone whose hopes have been extinguished. His choice to die near her residence in Glenelg seems deliberate. The unused train ticket suggests someone who never intended to leave. This theory gained credence when researchers discovered that Thompson had given birth to a son shortly before the Somerton man's appearance. The child's rare ear shape matching the deceased stranger's distinctive feature fueled speculation about paternity. Had he come to see his child, only to be rejected? Thompson's behavior after the discovery, her shocked reaction to his photograph despite denials of recognition, her lifelong refusal to discuss the case, her cryptic deathbed statement that he was known to her family. These all hint at personal connection rather than professional entanglement. Yet other evidence contradicts the romantic narrative. The cipher seems excessive for a jilted lover. The poisoning suggests something more sinister than heartbreak. And while Thompson maintained her silence until death, she never left Adelaide. An unusual choice if she feared connection to a mysterious death. A third theory emerged in medical circles, that the Somerton man suffered from a rare genetic disorder called McArdle's disease, which causes muscle stiffness and can result in sudden cardiac death. This might explain both his unusual calf muscles and his death without obvious cause. But it doesn't address the deliberately removed labels, the coded message, or Thompson's evasiveness. As conventional investigation methods stalled, the case entered the realm of modern forensic science. In 2011, Professor Abbott secured permission to collect DNA from the man's preserved hair samples. Using techniques unavailable to the original investigators, His team identified markers suggesting European ancestry, possibly from the Eastern Mediterranean. The preserved plaster cast of the man's ear, with its distinctive Darwin's tubercle, became the subject of genetic analysis. When compared with photographs of Thompson's son, researchers found the probability of relation statistically significant, but without DNA from the son, who declined to participate, conclusive proof remained elusive. In 2021, South Australian authorities approved the exhumation of the Somerton man's body, a watershed moment for the investigation. Advanced forensic techniques extracted DNA from bone samples, creating the most complete genetic profile to date. Initial results suggested possible connections to Thomas Jefferson's family line, hinting at American ancestry. Yet definitive identification remained just beyond reach. Dental records, preserved for 7 decades, revealed were consistent with American rather than Australian or British techniques, another small piece of the fragmented puzzle. Amateur sleuths continued where official investigations left gaps. The cipher became the focus of crowdsourced decryption efforts, with international code-breaking communities pooling their expertise. Some researchers claimed breakthroughs, seeing patterns that suggested names or locations, but none gained widespread acceptance among cryptography experts. The case attracted a devoted following unlike any other unsolved mystery. Professor Abbott himself married Rachel Egan, a woman who might be the Somerton man's granddaughter through Thompson's son. Their union symbolized how deeply this mystery had woven itself into the fabric of Australian identity. Each generation of investigators brought new techniques and perspectives. Some focused on the mundane aspects that earlier detectives overlooked: the specific brand of cigarettes, the manufacturing origin of his aluminum comb, the distinctive stitching on his boots. Others employed artificial intelligence to analyze the cipher, generating thousands of potential solutions. The most compelling modern theory synthesizes elements from multiple narratives. The Somerton man was likely an American with European ancestry, possibly involved in intelligence work during World War II, who formed a relationship with Jessica Thompson. After the war, he tracked her to Adelaide, perhaps discovering she had his child. Whatever transpired between them ended with his death, possibly suicide using poison, possibly murder. But theories, no matter how elegant, cannot substitute for identity. For 75 years, he has remained Australia's most famous John Doe, a man with distinct features, fingerprints, dental records, and now DNA, yet still without a name. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to remind us that even in a world where everything is known, the unknown still waits at the edges. The unidentified man who died on Somerton Beach has become more than just an unsolved case. He's transformed into a cultural touchstone, a persistent reminder of the limits of our investigative capabilities. His legacy stretches far beyond the confines of a dusty case file in Adelaide. Despite extraordinary advances in forensic science, despite the collective intelligence of generations of detectives, despite the tireless efforts of amateur sleuths who've dedicated decades to the pursuit, the central question remains unanswered. Who was he? This enduring mystery has spawned countless books, documentaries, podcasts, and university courses. Artists have created portraits imagining his life. Playwrights have crafted dramas speculating on his final hours. Novelists have built elaborate fictional narratives around his real circumstances. Even musicians have composed pieces inspired by the rhythmic pattern of his undeciphered code. But perhaps the most profound legacy of the Somerton man is philosophical rather than factual. In an age where privacy seems increasingly antiquated, where surveillance cameras track our movements, where our digital footprints follow us everywhere, this man achieved what now seems impossible. He died completely unidentified, his connections to the world entirely severed except for the most tantalizing fragmentary clues. We know what he looked like. We know his height, weight, and hair color. We know his blood type and fingerprints. We know he had exceptional calves and a rare ear formation. We even know his DNA profile. Yet somehow, we still don't know his name. This contradiction, knowing everything about someone while knowing nothing at all, speaks to something fundamental about human existence. We are more than our physical characteristics, more than our genetic code. Identity encompasses connections, relationships, histories, all the things the Somerton man successfully obscured. The case continues to attract new investigators, each bringing fresh perspectives. Genetic genealogists are now working to connect his DNA profile to potential relatives through ancestry databases. Artificial intelligence programs are being developed specifically to analyze his cipher. Advanced forensic techniques continue to extract new information from preserved evidence. Yet there's a growing sense that perhaps this mystery will, and should, remain unsolved. The Somerton man has become something more valuable than just another closed case. He represents the thin line between the knowable and the unknowable, a meditation on the limits of certainty in an uncertain world. For all our technological prowess, for all our investigative techniques, for all our determination to categorize and classify everything, this one man remains stubbornly, persistently anonymous. In the vast ocean of human knowledge, he is an island of ignorance, a reminder that there are still secrets beyond our reach. Jessica Thompson took whatever she knew to her grave. Her son lived his life under the shadow of speculation about his paternity. The intelligence agencies of several nations have neither confirmed nor denied involvement. The book that contained the torn phrase, Tamám Shud, has never been fully traced to its source. Even if modern DNA techniques eventually put a name to the Somerton man, certain questions will remain forever unanswered. What was the meaning of the code? Why did he erase his identity so thoroughly? What brought him to that beach on his final day? What secrets did Jessica Thompson keep locked away for decades? The human desire for closure, for neat narratives with clear beginnings and endings, finds no satisfaction here. Instead, we're left with a mystery that mirrors the greater mysteries of existence itself. Questions without answers, patterns without meaning, endings without explanation. Perhaps that's why this case has endured while others have faded from memory. The Somerton man doesn't just represent an unsolved death. He represents all that remains beyond our understanding, all that eludes our grasp despite our best efforts. In the end, his legacy isn't just the questions he left behind, but the humility those questions inspire in each new generation of investigators. Every failed attempt to identify him, every unsuccessful decryption of his code, every dead-end theory serves as a reminder. There are limits to what we can know, borders to what we can discover, frontiers that remain unexplored despite our most sophisticated tools. The Somerton man reminds us that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be contemplated. As we stare into the unknown, we learn something valuable about ourselves and the world we inhabit. And perhaps, in some poetic sense, that's what Tamám Shud, it is ended, truly means. Not just the end of a man's life, but the end of certainty, the end of our illusions about how much we can truly know about another human being. The beach where he was found continues to attract visitors who stand where he once lay, looking out at the same horizon, wondering about the man who took his secrets to the grave. His weathered tombstone, marked simply the unknown man, stands as a monument not just to him, but to all that remains beyond our knowing. And so the question echoes through time: who was the Somerton man? The answer may never come, but perhaps, in the asking, we discover something more valuable than the answer itself.